Scuderia Ferrari and fucking everything up. That combination will go down in the history books of Formula 1 because, as we all know, Ferrari like to mess up at every opportunity possible. So I've decided to go through every single race so far in the 2025 season and tell you and discover all the fuck-ups that they've done. And trust me, there's a lot, and it's only 12 races in. So buckle up, Ferrari fans, because we're about to go on an adventure. In the first race of the season, we head to Australia, and shite hit the fan at every possible opportunity. Hadjar fucked it, Doohan fucked it in about 5 corners. Sainz spun under the safety car, which is embarrassing, and Lewis Hamilton dropped to 8th at the start of the race. Not great, but not abysmal. Fast forward to lap 44, and Charles Leclerc does exactly what the two McLarens did, goes off at turn 14, and as it's starting to rain, you would probably think as a Ferrari team member, maybe let's pit him because he's gone off the track when it's raining and he's on dry tyres. So you would think they would pit him, right? Wrong. Ferrari does what Ferrari does and stays out on hard tyres when it's pissing down with rain. Ferrari stay out on the track on hard tyres when it's pissing down with rain, and Bortoleto and Lawson have their own incidents and fuck into the wall and bring out the safety car. So obviously, being a safety car, the Ferraris have to pit, and they go from 2nd and 4th in 5 laps time. They are down in 9th and 10th.
Well done, everybody.
At the second race of the season in China, Lewis Hamilton remembers who the fuck he is and slaps it on pole position. Ferrari goes wild. It was for the sprint race, not for the main race, but still, Ferrari pole position for the sprint race, and he did convert it into the win. So 15 points for the Ferrari as Leclerc finished in 5th, so another 5 points for him, and 10 add 5 is 15. So 15 points before qualifying for Sunday. So a great start to the weekend for the team in red. Ferrari line up 5th and 6th on the grid for Sunday's big race in China.
China. In China, they say I don't like China. I love China. People think I don't like China. I love China. China is the new China, by the way. China. I deal with China. China, big league China. So don't tell me about China. I know China.
Now, on lap 1, Charles Latifi remembers who the fuck he is and gets wing damage on lap 1. Not ideal, especially when you find out that he crashed into Lewis in order to get that wing damage. So, not the best start to the Grand Prix. And then Ferrari have a domestic over swapping the cars. Hamilton says, no, bitch, I'm not going to move. And then he eventually does. And they ended up finishing 5th and 6th with Leclerc ahead of Hamilton. So, not a bad weekend. 1st and 5th in the sprint race, 15 points. And then 5th and 6th in the big race on Sunday, meaning they would secure 34 points. Right? Wrong. Ferrari do a Ferrari strategy and get both cars disqualified after the race. I mean, you cannot fucking write it. Both Ferraris get disqualified for 2 different reasons. Charles Leclerc had a big shit before the race and his car was underway, and Lewis Hamilton once again had a plank wear infringement, whatever the fuck that means. So flashbacks to the US Grand Prix where Leclerc and Hamilton both get disqualified, and this happens in the second race of the season. At the 4th race at Bahrain, Charles Leclerc qualifies P3 behind Piastri and Russell. Yes, Norris and Verstappen both fucked their laps up, so it probably would have been P5, but still. And Leclerc actually started the race from 2nd because Osama bin Russell got a grid penalty. 1 place grid penalty, which I didn't even think was a thing, so sure. 5 lights are out, and Osama bin Russell and Pando Porras have an absolute steaming start. They both overtake Leclerc after the first corner. Norris has a ding-dong with Charles Leclerc, but he gets him eventually. However, Pando Porras, the fraud himself, was over his grid box, so the one time he actually got a good start, he was actually too far ahead of his grid box, so Lando being Lando, he gets a 5-second penalty, and then they have a big ding-dong towards the end of the race, but he then overtakes Charles Leclerc about 5 times off the track, and eventually gets him, and Ferrari secure a nice 4th and 5th finish. Nice. At the next race in Saudi Arabia, Lewis Hamilton barely gets into Q3 by 7 milliseconds ahead of Alex Albon in a Williams. 7 milliseconds. Fast forward to lap 30 and Ferrari do a magical thing. Ferrari have done a 2-second pit stop, and look at it. Isn't it just beautiful? A 2-second pit stop from Scuderia Ferrari. That deserves at least 10 points, because for those Italians to do a 2-second pit stop, or a pit stop below 3 seconds, is quite an achievement. So Ferrari do a 2-second pit stop and they all high-five each other and then go have a bowl of spaghetti each. So that was nice. And then Charles Leclerc overtook George Russell for P3 and finished on the podium. So a very nice weekend for Saudi Arabia for Scuderia Ferrari, as they get a podium, and Lewis Hamilton was in 7th because he had kind of a shit weekend. So one side of the garage was on the podium, the other side was really struggling. So mixed weekend for Ferrari. Now we head to the cringe fest of Miami, and it is absolutely pissing down on the reconnaissance lap, and Charles Latifi remembers who the fuck he is and aquaplanes into the wall. Now, I know he doesn't have any control when he aquaplanes, but I had to kind of include it because, you know, it's good for the video, so piss off. And then for the sprint race, Hamilton gambles on a soft tyre when it starts to dry up, and Hamilton pulls off a great strategy and ends up finishing 3rd at the sprint race. So very nice job from Lewis Hamilton. Definitely not on Ferrari. That was definitely Hamilton's call, so I'm not having any of that. Lewis Hamilton pulls a good strategy for Ferrari and ends up finishing 3rd. And then for the main race, he qualified 12th. So again, very bipolar from Ferrari once again. A podium in the sprint race and then knocked out in Q2 3 hours later. Ferrari, ladies and gentlemen. And then on to the main race, where there was a full-blown domestic. Now, there was a semi-domestic in China. Lewis and Charles Leclerc were arguing over the phone and crying to the race engineers about all sorts of shit. But in Miami, there was a full-blown domestic. Nearly an Amber Heard, Johnny Depp situation. It was that bad. Enter lap 37, where Lewis Hamilton comes on the radio and says, "Get this monegasque twat out of my way." And Ferrari reply with, "No, bitch, shut the fuck up." Fair enough. And then 2 laps later, they actually let Hamilton go through on Charles Leclerc. And then after that swap, Ferrari make 0 progress. And 14 laps later, they then reinvert the cars. So now it's Leclerc ahead of Hamilton. And then Hamilton drops one of the coldest lines of all time.
And China's 1.4 behind. You want to let fast as well?
The sarcasm is in full flow today.
But Ferrari being Ferrari, they tell Charles Leclerc that Hamilton's going to get out of the way, but not tell Hamilton to move out of the way. So Charles Leclerc was under the impression that Hamilton was going to move, but Lewis Hamilton had absolutely no idea of what was going on. So how do you tell one driver that they're going to move out of the way and then not tell that driver to move? Logic. And then they ended up finishing P7 and P8, only scoring 14 points. So, not ideal. After having a shite weekend, Ferrari returned to Imola for their home Grand Prix in literally their back garden. And the Tifosi are waiting and praying for a good result. Maybe a 3-4, maybe even a pole position at home.
Hamilton is eliminated. Will it be both Ferraris? Fernando Alonso ensures it is both Ferraris. Charles Leclerc out. Lewis Hamilton out.
Both Ferraris get knocked out in Q2 because the Aston Martins and Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon all overtake them and then end up qualifying 11th and 12th. I mean, being out-qualified by both Aston Martins and by both Williams is extremely embarrassing, let alone in your home race. But to be fair to Ferrari, you know, this is a video slagging them off, but I have to give them some praise. They actually had a nice recovery. They recovered to P4 and P6, which is, quick maths,
20 points.
20 points at your home race. Not the 43 that they wanted, but 20 is not too bad, especially from where they were qualifying 11th and 12th. And at Imola, the place where you cannot overtake, recovering to 4th and 6th was actually quite a good job. So fair play to Ferrari, and we move on. Now we head to the worst track on the grid, the Monaco Grand Prix, where definitely nothing dramatic for Ferrari has ever happened before, and everything has gone smooth sailing, and Leclerc's favourite race because he does so well here every year. It's qualifying, it's Q3, and Max Verstappen is on a lap. And you might be wondering, what the fuck are we talking about Max Verstappen for? But Lewis Hamilton was on an out lap, and his race engineer says that Max Verstappen has slowed down coming up to turn 3, which is Massenet. So Lewis gets back on the power and then ends up impeding Max on his flying lap. So, you know, the Verstappen shaggers and Team LH had a mental breakdown on Twitter and saying that they didn't impede him and said Lewis is a cheating bastard and all that shite. And Lewis receives a 3-place grid penalty because his race engineer thought that Max Verstappen had abandoned his lap whilst he's going full throttle up the hill. For Christ, these race engineers for Ferrari are fucking melons. I think I could do that job. I think a monkey could do that job, because how can you say that he's backed off when he's literally going full throttle up to Massenet?
You fucking idiots.
It's the final runs of Q3. Leclerc goes onto provisional pole and every Monegasque women's vagina explodes. Leclerc is on pole position for the Monaco Grand Prix once again. Until Lando Norris did a faster lap than him and he actually started second. And then that's where he finished because it's Monaco, so you can't overtake. So it was a nice idea. On to the next race at Spain, where the Ferraris line up 5th and 7th, and on lap 47 Lewis Hamilton comes into the pit lane and Ferrari do what Ferrari do best, a 4.7 pit stop, nearly sending Lewis Hamilton out behind Isaac Hadjar, who is driving a Visa Cash App, whatever the hell they're called, car, who is like the 6th fastest car. So not great. After their 2-second pit stop a couple of weeks ago, to do a 4.7 pit stop in a really crucial part of the race is very fucking stupid. And then Lewis Hamilton ended up finishing behind Nico Hülkenberg, who is driving a bin bag with 4 wheels. So that really explains Lewis Hamilton's career so far at Ferrari. Was undone. Oh my Christ, if that's fucked up the audio, I'm going to kill myself. It's the British Grand Prix and the Ferraris line up 5th and 6th in qualifying. Not bad, probably where they've been the whole season, 5th and 6th, because they're probably the 3rd quickest car, so that's about fair. So 5th and 6th, probably wanting a nice clean race because it is going to piss down, so you want to be nice and calm and composed and not do anything
stupid.
It's the formation lap. Cars are going around the track nice and slowly, and Charles Leclerc decides, you know what, I'm going to pit for dry tyres off my intermediates, which seems like quite a good idea because the track didn't look too wet, but maybe it was a bit too early, maybe 1 or 2 laps early, and he made absolutely no progress and he went backwards because the gamble did not pay off. After 11 laps, he comes back into the pit lane to pit for intermediates, and he was about 3 billion minutes behind where he was. So not a great start to the race. On to the second transition of the race. Not like transitioning like genders, like transition from dries to wets. Not, okay, that's besides the point. The second transition comes at the British Grand Prix, and Leclerc pits and ends up being nearly a minute behind Norris, who was leading the race. A full minute behind Lando Norris, who is in a car that's probably 0.3 a lap quicker, and he's a minute behind him. What the fuck? And then to add salt to injury, Charles Leclerc nearly fucks his car into the wall, going through Maggots and Beckett's, and does about 14 360s. And then a couple of laps later, he goes into the gravel, just putting the cherry on top of the cake, just digging his own grave of how shite of a weekend he's just had, and he finishes 14th. So not an ideal race for Leclerc anyway. Hamilton did finish 4th, but definitely could have got a podium. So he decided to pit onto fresh softs a couple of laps before Hülkenberg and went off the track. Leclerc was behind him and then also went off the track behind him. It was a mess, and he ended up finishing 4th, so decent points. So there we go, 12 races into the 2025 season, and Ferrari are being Ferrari as per. Lewis Hamilton is regretting his decision because that Mercedes is quicker than the Ferrari. Charles Leclerc is tempted to jump off his balcony in Monaco, and we are 2 races away from the summer break. That is the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed. This is a little thing I've decided to do. I've been recording for 25-30 minutes, and I was inspired by RPM, as you can tell, and I want to do my own type of video and see how hard it was to actually do one of these. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, comment, all that shit. Call me a spastic in the comments if you want to, and call me a C-Tech RPM. I would not mind that. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments of this video. Yeah, we're just doing it for a little bit of fun. We've got 2 races until the summer break, and then we're gonna end up cutting ourselves because we have nothing to do during the summer break. So yeah, as I said, if you enjoyed, like and subscribe, all that jack shit, and let's end the video with Pavarotti. So thank you and ciao. Is that ciao? Is that Italian in goodbye? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just piss off.
Torintinanto